Today on Positive Talk Daily, we're looking at a Samsung Galaxy S24. This is a phone that was released last year, and it's almost 2 years old now. But the S24 is still a pretty solid smartphone for the price. Samsung Galaxy S24 is rocking a 6.1-inch dynamic AMOLED display, 120 Hz refresh rate, Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, 4,000 mAh battery, and a triple camera setup. Again, it's a 6.2-inch display, resolution 2340 by 1080p, 19 by 5:9 ratio, 416 ppi. The dynamic AMOLED display, 120 Hz refresh rate, 90.87% of the phone is screen, and the peak brightness is 2600. And HDR support, scratch-resistant glass, Corning Gorilla Glass 2, Victus, and much more. Now, even though this phone is over a year old, it's still giving you the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor. You're getting a 3.39 gigahertz chipset, Cortex X4, also a 3.1 gigahertz Cortex A720, and a 2.9 gigahertz Cortex A20. The Adreno 750, 8 gigs of RAM, and 128 gigs of storage running Android 14 One UI. This thing is rocking some triple cameras, 50 megapixel aperture f1.8, Foco's length 24 millimeters, sensor is 1.56, and overall you got a 10 megapixel telephoto lens, you get an optical zoom 3 times zoom. This is just a very powerful phone with decent cameras, a 12 megapixel ultra wide. When we open the box, you're not getting anything special here from Samsung. I mean, it's seriously a joke what these companies today, these cellular companies, think they give you for a smartphone, but they don't even give you a charger in the box. They don't even give you, really, they just give you the wire, and that's it, and some booklets. And here is the phone right here. This is the Samsung Galaxy S24 in its full glory. Now it's rocking that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor with 120 Hz refresh rate, which you're not getting on a standard iPhone 16. And as you can see, this thing is snappy. There's no lag. There's nothing. You get that camera application here with tons of portrait, photo, video modes, and much more. You just get everything you need on here, really. And, they actually look the same. This phone actually looks like the S25. If I told you this was the S25, you would assume it was. But it is an S24, but they all look the same. They all operate the same. You get your Google AI, circle to search. You get all kinds of stuff here. The cameras in the back are a triple camera setup here. You got your flash. Looking at the bottom, Type-C charging. You do get noise cancellation. You also get a SIM removal kit there, so you can remove the SIM, and it's also an eSIM. Stereo speakers at the bottom. I think it's 30-watt fast charging. At the top, you get your microphones, headphone jack. No IR blaster on here. Turn it around. You got your power button. You do have your volume rocker, and you do get what I think is kind of cool is an onboard fingerprint scanner, which makes this phone great. And you can also do face unlock thanks to Samsung. Now, some of the advantages of this new Samsung Galaxy device, that it gives you 120 Hz refresh rate, and you're not going to get 120 Hz refresh rate on a iPhone. And I mean, when you're seeing the phone here, this thing is fluent, okay? You're not going to get this with a 60 Hertz panel, okay? And if Apple says, hey, you won't really notice it. People that are Apple fanboys are like, oh, well, you don't even notice the 90 Hertz. You don't notice the 60 Hertz panel on the iPhone. Bullshit, you don't. Look at this. I mean, this thing is snappy. Watch me just go through everything here. That is the difference between, look at this again. This is the difference between 120 Hertz versus a 60 Hertz panel, okay? And don't tell me that does not beat an iPhone. Now, if you have the iPhone 16 Pro Max, you will get that 120 hertz refresh rate. And I mean, it's definitely a big difference from what you're seeing here on this device. Now, let's just put these two phones aside. You got the iPhone 16e on your side here, and then you got your S24 here. Here's the difference, okay? You got a 120 hertz refresh rate, okay? You can't tell me you cannot see a difference, man. Like, this is a big difference versus 60 hertz. Look at this. Now, the 60 hertz panel is fast, but that's as fast as it goes. Look how snappy this is. It's like twice as fast, dude. Like, you still have some decent scrolling speeds, but if this was 120 hertz, this thing would be just as snappy as this. I mean, look at this. So if you're an iPhone, if you're one of those iPhone people who is not used to seeing a 120 hertz refresh rate, and you say, hey, you can't see the difference, you got to be smoking some weed here, folks. I mean, this is definitely, you can see a difference. Look at this. You can definitely see a difference, okay? I mean, look at this. You know, you can see a difference. It's almost twice the specs, folks. You know what I mean? Just looking at everything on here. Now, the difference here is this phone is obviously a year older than this one. This one just came out not even a couple months ago. This one is obviously rocking an older chipset, but you're going to be getting much better cameras on board. We're comparing this phone to the iPhone 16e, and you know this has the camera layout of an S25. It does have the body of the S23. They all kind of look the same, but the cameras, you know, Apple needs to learn how to actually put cameras on mid-range devices. And another embarrassment for the 16e is the fact it only has one camera. Apple claims that this is a Fusion camera. Bullshit, that's Fusion. That's one camera, and it only does one thing right. It does take good photos, but it does not compare. So if you're coming from something like this, look how fast this is. Like, you don't even notice it. This, you do. You know? Now, iPhones do run fairly good, but, you know, comparisons aside, even though the iPhone is probably rocking a slightly newer chipset, and your Geekbench numbers may be a little bit better on the iPhone, I think the winner here is easily the S24, thanks to that 120 hertz refresh rate, 3 cameras, larger screen. You're getting a 6.2 inch screen here, and you're only getting a 6.1 inch with an old-fashioned notch at the top. If we were comparing this to maybe the iPhone 16 Pro Max, it'd be a totally different story. But when we're comparing it to the lowest 16 series phone on Apple to the S24 from last year, this thing just wipes it clean. The only thing this phone probably beats this one in, maybe battery life. I think the iPhone 16e has solid battery life, and it might beat it in the performance as well. For Mr. Positive Live, I'm Mr. Positive. You know, if somebody's telling you to, you know, you can't see the difference between a 60 hertz display and a 120 hertz refresh rate, and they're an Apple fanboy, they need to seriously use they need to seriously use a Android device to see the difference between something like this and the S24 that we just reviewed. For Mr. Positive Live, I'm Mr. Positive. Again, I'm not saying you can't take one of these phones here and utilize them, and they're both going to give you great performance, but the S24 is the one.